led by Mr. McLaughlin, followed by the invocation led by Dr. Trampy.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father, we pray for all those who are hurting as a result of hurricanes, whether they're still in harm's way or whether they've suffered loss. We pray that you be with them, and we pray that you be with us this evening and guide us as we do the people's business. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. First matter is approval of your agenda, and I would note that the requester, Mr. Cibula, has asked that the one item in the bullpen be pulled. So we ask for your approval of your agenda as presented.
All right, and I understand we have a voice vote tonight. So do I have a motion to approve our agenda?
So moved.
All right, and we'll call the question. The ayes?
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it.
Very good. First item is your consent agenda. Have the floor computer, please. Consent agenda matters are as follows. Number one is approval of the board meeting minutes of August 8th, 2017. Second is to accept and appropriate the FY18 Petfinder Foundation sponsor pet grant, Find a Pet grant, and that is a total grant of $180 with no local match. Third is accept a grant award and amend the budget for the FY18 Highway Safety Grant Program Selective Enforcement Grant for Speed. That is a total grant of $52,200 with a local match of $31,008. Fourth is to accept a grant award and amend the budget for the FY18 Highway Safety Grant Program Selective Enforcement Grant for Alcohol. It's a total grant of $116,050 with a local match of $66,949. Fifth is to accept a grant award and appropriate the fall 2018 VA Office of Emergency Medical Services grant. It's a $49,422 grant with a local match in the same amount budgeted from FREM. Next is appropriation for the Virginia Office of Emergency Medical Services FY18 Rescue Squad Assistance Fund grant for FREM, and that's request a grant of $16,980. Next is the appointment of Mr. Stan Huie to the Citizens Transportation Advisory Group for a term that expires September 12th of 2019. Number 8 is appointment of Mr. Les Inbody as an alternate member to the Citizen Budget Review Committee for a term that expires December 31st of 2019. Next is appointment of Marc G. Smith to the Economic Development Authority for a term that expires December 31st of 2017. Item 10 is approval of contract modification number 1. This is a renewal, the first renewal to Mary Washington Healthcare physicians for medical services. These are physicals for our employees. Item 11 is to approve contract modification number 1 for renewal with BMS Direct Incorporated. This is for printing and mailing services. Item 12 is to approve a task order to Moseley Architects PC for the Judicial Center Expansion and Renovation Phase 1. It's in the amount of $809,348. Item 13 is to authorize advertisement of a public hearing for amendments and additions to County Code Chapter 13, Section 6, dogs constituting public nuisance. This would be a hearing at your October 10th meeting this fall. Item 14 is authorize advertisement of public hearing for amendments and additions to County Code Chapter 4, Animals and Fowl, Articles 1 through 4, again for hearing at your October 10, 2017 meeting. Item 15 is to authorize advertisement of a public hearing on a change in the use of Harrison Crossing proffers, and this is also for your October 10, 2017 meeting. Number 16 is a budget adjustment and appropriation for the acceptance of the FY 2018 Virginia State Police Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force subaward for the sheriff's office. This is $12,000 granted, and there is no local match. Item 17 are budget adjustments to account for the 2017 bond sale proceeds. Item 18 are corrections to the Citizen Budget Review Committee charter. These are clerical corrections. Item 19 is a grant application request for the federal fiscal year 2017 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Program for local solicitation. We are eligible to receive $30,237, and again, this is your authorization to apply for this grant. Item 20 is a proclamation recognizing First Responders Appreciation Day. That was August 24th of 2017. Item 21 is reappointment of Mr. Robert Fogg to the Transportation Committee, whose term, for a term that expires September 12th of 2018, and that is the agenda, the consent agenda for the evening.
Would anybody like an item pulled from the consent agenda? Mr. Jakubowski?
Yes, thank you. Can I have 8, 18, and 21 pulled, please?
8, 18, and 21?
Any other items from the consent agenda to be pulled? Okay. With that, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of those items pulled?
So moved.
And we'll call the question. The ayes?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it.
Then the first item pulled was number 8, which is the appointment of Mr. Les Inbody as an alternate member to the Citizens Budget Review Committee.
Yes, thank you. My reason for pulling that is I did not see a resume attached at all, and I would like to see a resume before I vote on any appointments to any board. And I didn't know if I was the only one that didn't see it or if it just wasn't attached.
He did not submit one to me until last night, so I'm okay with tabling this until our next meeting
All right, thank you.
and getting that resume in there. So I don't know if we need a motion to table that, Mark, or, yep, okay. So a motion to table the appointment of Les Inbody as alternate to CBRC until our next meeting in September. Any ayes?
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it.
Takes to item 18, which are corrections to the CBRC charter.
May I jump in real quick? Can we talk about 21 just real quick? And my reason for that was that the term, it's my appointee to the Transportation Committee, and that term would then go into the next board term. And I wanted to see how we can correct that to make that end with the term that I'm currently serving.
And I thought that's what we were under,
Right,
actually,
but
too.
but it didn't
yep,
read that way.
sure.
And so I just want to make sure.
And I did notice that Stan Huie's appointment to the CTAG ended before my term is up, so.
Okay, so the appointment of Robert Fogg to the Transportation Committee, that being Ms. Jakubowski's appointment, that should end December 31st of this year.
Yes, sir. And if there's nothing else, I'd like to make a motion to approve with that change.
There's a motion on the floor. The ayes? Aye. Any nays? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Leaves us with item 18, corrections to the CBRC charter.
No, I asked for this one to be pulled too, for a little bit more of explanation of what exactly we're looking at. And I did have one concern about something in the bylaws and wanted to see if this would be the time to have that amended, or at least have discussion about having that amended.
What you're looking at in the proposed revisions to the CBRC charter was occasioned by the last time this was up on May 9th, 2017, for revisions to the charter, to the bylaws mainly. The wrong version, a draft version of the charter, was used for the red line of the changes you were considering. So it contained some other modifications that were not intended. So basically, when the board adopted it adopted it in toto, the intended changes and the unintended changes. And so what the board has in front of it now is a red line going back to what had been approved prior to May 9, along with the changes that were made on May 9. So basically, if the board accept the red line version today, it would be accepting what was in place before May 9 and what the board intended to change on May 9. It was a Scrivener's error.
So looking at the document, the red portion that is underlined is the corrected version to go back to, and the parts that are struck out are what is currently there, because we did vote on the current charter as is. And so what you're saying to do is to go back, because I mean, we voted on the charter as it sits, so I'm not sure why we are going back to correct it if at the time it was okay as it was.
Well, the board should have voted on the charter as it was, but didn't because the version pulled up to make those changes was not the version that was in force at the time. It was a prior draft from April of 2013. This board considered a version of the charter in April of 2013 and then adopted a slightly revised version, these exact revisions here, in fact, in June of 2013. But in creating the red line version for the May 2017 changes, we inadvertently used the April 2013 draft rather than the one that had been approved. So these changes that you see here going back are changes that did not exist in the charter before May 9, 2017.
Right, but we did approve them.
The board did approve it. Our assumption was that since they were not in that, they were approved because they're there, but they weren't redlined, they weren't highlighted, they weren't addressed in any fashion. So our assumption was that it was unintentional, and we didn't want.
So they weren't highlighted, so we didn't know that they were being changed.
Exactly.
Okay.
And one of those items in there that brought it to my attention, Mr. Jakubowski, was it had in the charter that the CBRC is to report to the board every month. And I was like, that's not what we want, and that's not what we had in there. So.
Well, if I may, at this time, since we are talking about this, the one item, and I've heard from folks on our school board of the sort of chain of command, or not chain of command, but chain of the process to have questions asked and answered. And I do see that it says in here that the committee shall receive support from any county and school staff as needed to perform the duties of the committee, so long as it does not disrupt normal county operations and/or protocol. I would really like to see the CBRC have one point of contact in the county that everything is funneled to, and then that person funnels it out to where it needs to get to. That way, somebody who's inside the organization will know that such and such a person is the person responsible for that, and it wouldn't be going to the wrong person and create delays and whatnot. And it would just make it more efficient and easier to track also.
Mr. Jakubowski, so would that be a change to simply say that the committee shall work through the designated point of contact in each organization rather than points? Is that what you're referring to? So there would be one point of contact in each?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So if I can make that change and then make the motion to adopt, including that change.
That's certainly something you're able to do if you'd like to present that to the board.
All right, I just did. Okay.
Any other discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Back prior to my service on the board, I was the chairman of the Citizens Budget Review Committee. And the modus operandi, if you will, during that point in time was that the chairman of the Citizens Budget Review Committee funneled all requests and actions through the county administrator, who then dispersed those actions and requests out through the county and to the schools. This was a very good, workable process, and I would like to see us go back to that and have that single point of contact be designated, in fact, as the county administrator. So if Mr. Yakubowski would accept I guess, a friendly amendment to do that.
That's fine.
Any other discussion?
Just to clarify, if I may, Mr. Sebula, so you would like the bylaws to reflect that the county administrator is the designated point of contact for the county?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Sebula, I just want to consider one thing in your request, and that is we know that Mr. Taylor has really got a lot of things coming through. I'm thinking possibly one of our assistant county administrators might do it because it seems like our county administrator is got a lot on his plate working here and there, and I would like to see him, or rather than me either, then go into the assistant county administrator, who I would think might be a little bit more appropriate and helpful and efficient that we use one of the assistant county administrators.
What would you accept, and would you accept if you just put the county administrator or his designee? Then he could designate whoever he wants to, or he could take it himself.
That's the way it reads currently, is that he can designate that point of contact. So there's no change necessary. It would just do away with Mr. Sebula's change.
Okay, and all I'm saying here on this case is that, again, I'm not saying that the school's not important. Matter of fact, it's very important. That's probably why you want, I believe, one person to be in touch, and you know, somebody does one thing over here, then another person does it. You might lose something in the transaction. So my preference would be to designate the assistant county administrator and let him handle whether it's, you know, they're very capable of doing that. And that way we relieve our county administrator from a task that he could be doing other things with. And this way it's in one person's hands and the continuity is always there the same way.
I have no objection, but my intent was the county attorney being the point of contact, and he can designate whoever he wishes, or the county administrator can designate one of his deputies if he so desires to do that. That's my intent. I don't think that conflicts with what you're asking.
Yeah, I agree, as long as what you're saying is Mr. Taylor will designate one of those people, and it'll be that person that handles these. Not, and you know what I'm saying is, I don't want the county administrator giving one to Mr. Cole at one time and then one to Mr. Petrovich. I think it's very important to have one person as the point of contact, and if he wants to make that decision, whether it be Mr. Cole or Mr. Petrovich, that's fine with me. But I think we need to designate one person.
And I agree with the one-person designation. I've been saying that Mr. Taylor be the one to do that, based on the workload that he's aware of within the office.
All right. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, I thought the county attorney said that the original motion by Mr. Yakubowski answered Mr. Spiel's question. Is that correct?
Well, the question is, and I was just going to follow up after you to clarify. So if you want to allow Marc to designate the point of contact, whoever that may be, it's fine the way it stands now, and the only change would be Mr. Yakubowski's change. If you want it to be Marc or only one of his assistants, that would need an additional change in addition to Mr. Yakubowski. So it depends on what the board wants to do. Does the board want to have Marc or only one of his assistants, or do you want to leave it as Marc or whoever he designates as that one point of contact?
My intent was to go ahead and let Mark decide which one of the assistants that he will designate.
And so was mine. I'll withdraw the friendly amendment.
Yeah, so what we'll have Chris's motion to have the designated person, along with Mr. Cibula's motion, with the friendly amendment taken by Gary, to be either the county administrator or one of his deputy county administrators, as determined by the county administrator.
No, sir, I don't agree with that. What we're trying to say is that let Mark decide between Mr. Cole and Mr. Petrovich who's going to handle all these requests. Mark can make that decision, but it's not going to be all, Mark says, I'm going to do this, and then the next one comes in that says, Mr.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
Okay,
Mr. Cole.
Just to kind of clarify, you know, we usually assign a staff person to every one of these, you know, to kind of be the liaison for every one of these boards and commissions and committees that we have. Currently, for the CBRC, it's the Director of Finance. And, you know, I think, you know, that's worked out fairly well recently anyways, because has the, you know, in-depth knowledge about the budget and who they need to talk to get more information and things like that. I think it should be left up to the, you know, it's my own opinion, to the county administrator to decide who would be the best point of contact for these boards and commissions without trying to designate someone.
May I restate my motion? So that we can be clear, my motion was to make a single point of contact and make it the county administrator for him to designate from there. But for us to have him as the point person, and then, everybody clear?
That sounds good to me. Any other discussion? All right, I'm going to be brave here and say, call the question. The ayes?
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it.
And, Mr. Chair, just to reflect, the change then to the language here would be, in that section, the committee shall work through, and they will insert the designated, and it'll change points to point of contact in each organization as identified by the county administrator and school superintendent. Thank you.
Next up is public presentations. Amy, do we have folks signed up?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'll run through the guidelines for public presentations to the board. Public presentations are an opportunity for citizens to present matters you believe deserve the board's attention. These presentations are not part of a public hearing. Sign up to speak at each public hearing is separate. Public presentations are one-way comments from you to the Board of Supervisors. They are not a forum for a dialogue or debate. To make a public presentation, please sign up on the provided sign-up sheet and please print clearly. Come to the lectern when your name is called. Clearly state your name, your address, and your voting district for our record. Address your comments directly to the Board of Supervisors. And state whether you are speaking on your own behalf, in which case you'll have 3 minutes to speak, or speaking on behalf of a group, in which you will have 5 minutes to speak. Public presentations shall not be used to address matters that are the subject of public hearings, or to make political campaign speeches, private advertisements, or personal attacks. Your written comments are always welcomed by the Board of Supervisors. Amy, who's up first?
The first citizen is Carl Stedman, followed by Sarah Toy.
Well, if I can remember all that. My address was Forest Walk Drive, 11123, voting booth, number 7, I think it is, 07. And, he knows. I own half a pond, as that thing says. The line goes right through it, and I want very much for Mr. Gorell to own the whole dang thing. It wakes me up at night just thinking about it. And that's, I mean, it's only made to make my property 5 acres. Now, the 3 other houses over there were allowed to drop to 2 1/6 acres. Mine was left at 5 acres with that line through the pond, and which I can't walk on, I pay taxes on, but it's, I'm referring to the Miranda law. I was ignorant of this change in the law, and I think they let him go. He was as guilty as, one minute talking to this microphone. Yes, sir. I thought I was loud enough. And I'm a little league umpire. Well, anyway, I'm referring to that Miranda law that the man was guilty of sin, but that he did not know, that he was not advised of his rights, and he had to let him go. I know this is a stretch, and it's a long time ago, but what I'm asking you to do is relieve me of that pond, 1/2. I would give it to Mr. Gorell. He wants to pay me for it. Don't tell him I'd give it to him. But, but I mean, please do something. I mean, I was struck out the first time I was here. This is probably not in your purview, but I mean, I don't know who else to go to. They told me upstairs, she said, see that little thing on the board? No, yes, ma'am, didn't know what it was. They changed the law some time ago that cut me off. I couldn't sell, and the homeowners association, to which I do not belong, the property was never deeded to them, and the man who owned it never signed up with them. So I'm free to do things that I want to do, except sell part of my property. Well, this is not, it's just water. I mean, it's ridiculous that one person used to own half a pond. You know, people are buying his house or my house. I don't want to own just half of it. It'd be like that Indian thing. The name of it was, you fish on your side, I fish on my side, nobody but fish in the middle. Remember that, I'm old, I'm 87 years old. So you may not remember that. But if you can find a way to grandfather me in. I mean, the law was on my favor then, and I'm trying to do something now which I'm apparently not able to do. If you can find some way to, you know, work a stunt or something. But he wants to own that pond. I don't. I don't hate it. I mean, I love water. I can appreciate it if I don't, because I don't own it. I don't have to own it. I don't swim in it. I don't fish in it and do nothing with it, but just be aggravated owning it. So I don't know why I should be aggravated, but I don't like it. I don't want it, and help me get rid of it. He wants it. He's an attorney. He told me I have to go to a lawyer, and it costs thousands of dollars. I'll keep it to the rest of my days for that. I don't have that kind of money, but I know I've run out of time, correct? And just do something for me if you possibly can. You know, so I want to thank you for seeing me and bearing with me, and that little lady there, I'll never let her go. She's the most, Harry Belafonte used to sing, the woman is smart, her, but sitting right there. You are amazing.
Well, thank you very much.
I'm going to choir practice now at church. I'll pray for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
You saw me standing here today, and don't tell anybody you saw me.
Mr. Taylor, could you look into this and get back to me on what the options might be for
Absolutely, Mr.
this?
Goff,
And
I'm
then,
happy to.
appreciate that.
Sarah Toy.
It'd be hard to follow.
I'm Sarah Toy. That's a tough act to follow. I live at 12903 Mill Road in the Cortland District. I am speaking on behalf of my own very self. And I'm speaking about a matter on the agenda, which is zoning notices. First, and this may come as a surprise after my last appearance here, I want to thank everybody who has worked on that issue. I'm very pleased to see the proposed revised community meeting policy. I'm very pleased to see that there's proposed increased use of the county website to notify the public of zoning matters. Try to do this very quickly. One thing I read in the presentation that's going to be made today, I would very much urge the planning office to keep looking into ways to improve the public meeting notice signs, making them a little less flimsy, a little more noticeable, a little larger maybe. I know they don't want to store big metal signs. They don't want to have to lug them around and clean them and change things, but there must be some other options to make those signs more. And I think basically the changes that you're going to discuss today will save time, money, effort on the parts of zoning and rezoning applicants, on the part of the planning office, on your part, and I think an increase in community involvement will be extremely helpful in making this a much smoother and more, let's just say a better process. Thank you.
There are no other citizens signed up to speak.
Is there anyone that's not signed up to speak that would like to speak at this time? Yep.
While Ms. Collier is coming to the podium, I'll mention for the benefit of our control room is feedback received from cable customers. Please turn up the sound that's going out. Thank you.
Mary Lou Collier, Mr. Skinner's district. One, I am just amazed at the amount of construction that is being done at the old GM plant. It just amazes me how they have transformed it into something that's going to be spectacular, and the fact that it's going to bring more jobs to the county once this factory opens up. But they are just, they are really doing a roundabout job and clearing the land and making it presentable. Two, I was just wondering why we don't have stop signs on these two side roads that leave this building. If you look across the street, there's a stop sign coming out from the courthouses, but on this side of the street, you don't have stop signs. So someone that's familiar, and especially at nighttime, you're rolling out into the road without a stop sign. So if they could please check into getting stop signs on both of these side roads here, or if they can't put stop signs, at least put a bar with the word stop on the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that is not signed up to speak that would like to speak at this time? Okay, we'll close public presentation.
That brings us to
Mr. Chair, excuse me again. Just, could I have 1 minute real quick it's because of the public and I'm not sure, but I just wanted to let everybody know that we celebrated an 80th birthday this weekend, and Miss Mary Lee Carter, it was her birthday, and we had quite a fine turnout, and it was a turnout of people that respect her and love her for all the things that she's done for this county. And I just wanted to say another happy birthday to you, and thank you for everything that you've done from this county, because I do know that it's come from your heart, every decision. Thank you.
And that brings us to our VDOT report. Sean Nelson is here, our one designated point of contact with VDOT. Good to see you, Sean.
I'm actually not here for a regular report. I'm here just to go over Route 17 limited access changes. If I can find it here. Got a floor computer. This is for the Route 17 widening project, which is replacing the bridge over I-95 and widening Route 17 all the way down to Hospital Drive. If you all remember, a couple of months ago, I came to you about limited access changes on Route 606. Essentially, for every project that we have limited access changes, we have to have a letter of support from the county before we go to the CTB about the limited access changes. Route 17 is already a limited access roadway. There are some tweaks that we're having to make to the limited access based on some of the changes in design. We had a public hearing on the 23rd of August. The public was fairly receptive of the project. We had very limited comments. Some of the changes with this, the limited access line currently on the Glenwood Drive road is currently right here. As a part of the project, we're building a cul-de-sac so that school buses can actually get off of 17 and come in here and pick up the kids that are coming out of the Glenwood Park here. So the bus will be able to come in and turn around on a public road and come back out. So the limited access line now has to incorporate this addition of a cul-de-sac here. On the south side of the road, we're actually removing this access point to Overview Drive here, and it's moving further down. So the limited access line will now come across this entrance, and we're going to break the limited access here to replace Overview Drive. And essentially, those are the changes on the project, and I just wanted to know if the board has any questions regarding that.
Just one quick question for you, please. Let's say down the road, a couple of years or something, the people on the, I guess it would be the north side of 17 in the trailer depart in that property going to Hospital Boulevard or the entrance to Germanna. There is a process in case that we wanted to say right in, right out only, that we could provide or the developer could provide, and it would have to be approved by CTP?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
But there is a process. This isn't something that says, this is it for the rest of the future. No.
Exactly. There is a process that you go through.
Okay. And the other thing I'd like to bring up too right now, and this could be either this bridge or Thornburg Bridge, because it's this bridge is expected, you're hoping to have it done by 2022, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But in the Thornburg Bridge that we're looking at, the new bridge there, is there an expected date of completion there yet?
The project actually starts, we're having a pardon our dust meeting on that project come Monday night. So we're going to get a whole lot on the schedule. I believe that bridge is actually supposed to be done by 2020, 2021.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I was thinking of, and I know there's some colleagues here, perhaps Thornburg Bridge, what would it take for us to incorporate a sign like many, welcome to Spotsylvania County, crossroads of the Civil War? And I think we've all been trying to find something like that, and we've seen in Orlando and other places around the country where they have that.
I can go back and ask that question. I think this question has come up before. I think you can only really see that in incorporated cities. Like you see it in Hampton, the city of Hampton and whatnot, and the city of Fredericksburg probably could be able to do that. We have not seen that done in a county.
Well, we could be the first then, if you give us the process of what we would have to do with that, if possible.
I will look into that, but I'm not sure there is a process for that for a county to have advertising on a structure over the county, over 95 like that.
Mr. Chair, two quick questions for you. One, once you restrict access that's currently on that route, do the owners of those properties have recourse?
It's already limited access.
So it is already not an issue?
It's already limited access, yeah.
And again, I guess that follows the same question that was brought up to me this week. When the Route 3 project, now this is slightly off, but very similar, when the Route 3 project was done, we created a limited access or a problem for the Valero and the pawn shop and the pizza shop. What recourse do they have? Or can they come back in and reconsider the way that traffic was established?
Well, with the close proximity of that to I-95, I don't think you're going to be able to get any more access there. With that project, there was a service road put in for that along Route 3 that gives them access.
So, not to tie this part up, but if you could just send me something back on that so I can answer the question about whether there's any possibility to help them out. Thanks.
Mr. Yakubowski.
Thank you. Sean, just to follow up on what Mr. Skinner had brought up, and I think that we have talked about that before. So if you could also check that if it takes an act of the General Assembly, you know, we'd be more than happy to lean on our assembly members to see what needs to be done, simply because, and it doesn't have to be the website and everything that's on there. It just might need to be, you know, welcome to Spotsylvania County or just Spotsylvania County. Something just, you know, that we have been looking at for a long time to establish that we are here. You know, we had to go through the process to get Massaponack's exit changed to Spotsylvania, where I remember I was on the board, Mr. Marshall's on the board, and they had told us, no offense, VDOT had told us that it would cost too much money because Spotsylvania, it was a bigger name, and so they used a smaller font, and so we got it done. But just little things like that, you know, just because there's no process, but how can we do it?
Let me clarify, though. So you're asking for this to be on the bridge?
On the bridge, or, you know, I've also seen in other localities, maybe not in our state, where they have in the fencing that goes up, it's actually in the fencing.
And I'm pretty sure those are all in cities where they maintain them.
Okay. Well, we're paying for it, aren't we? I mean, this is bond money.
And I don't think it's going to be advertising as much as a show of goodwill to people who are coming into the county.
It's stating the locality. That's all it is. And so it may be not using the word advertising, but just a location sign or something.
I will give you a response.
Thank you.
And Sean, it could even go a little better than that. Is bridge coming from the south, bridge coming down from the north, Spotsylvania on each one. That defines us, and whatever it needs to be done, I think that you can work with us to make it happen.
I will give you a response.
Good call.
All right, so Sean is looking for support for this closure. Do you need a motion from the board, or
I think really it's just a letter that Marc needs to sign, so yeah.
do we need a motion for that, or are you good?
Could I ask for a motion to express your support and authorize me signing such?
I'll make such a motion to authorize the design that VDOT has presented tonight for the change of the, what lines would you call them?
Limited access.
Limited access lines.
Okay, any other discussion? Call to question, the ayes.
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it.
Okay, unless you all have anything else for me, I'm heading out. Thank you.
And that brings us to a short presentation on the recent business walk activity. There's Sophia.
Okay, so it doesn't look like my slides are up here, but that's okay because I came prepared. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I wanted to thank you for letting me have the moment to speak with you to give you a brief update on an economic development and tourism activity that we recently had. It was the Business Walk program. On Wednesday, August 2nd, we hosted our second Business Walk program. This event was a refinement of the pilot Business Walk program that was held last August. Right now, the county is the only locality taking this unique approach in our region. Some of the benefits have allowed us to keep costs and adjust the program to location, targets, and needs. We had a total of 12 volunteers this year, and we were able to partner with the Virginia Employment Commission office. The target area this year was Lee's Hill Park area, where 70 businesses were visited. We're planning to continue this program annually and looking at a 2018 business walk. We searched for an area with a diverse mix of employers that were compacted to implement the program more efficiently. We included brief survey questions on economic growth and local business climate. A lot of positive feedback was received. A large amount of businesses commented on their growth and that they had been within the county for several years, and businesses appreciated the hands-on visits and that contact was made with them. Thank you.
Questions from the board? All right, thank you. Mr. Yakubowski, go ahead.
I just have one quick one. Was there any type of general response that you were getting besides thank you for coming by? Were there complaints? I mean, I'm sure traffic and things like that, but anything else? Because I think this is very positive, and thank you for coming and presenting. But if we can get some of those details, and then we can make better policy. So especially if there's, a section of the county there's a certain issue, then, we can address that. So was there anything that was coming up?
With everybody growing, there were concerns that they wanted the focus to be on transportation and having the ability to have more buses, bus routes to be able to come to the business so that they could have customers come to their businesses a little bit easier.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Next is a resolution to remove or repair an unsafe structure located at 16540 Daysbridge Road, and to authorize advertisement of a public notice in connection with that. Good evening.
Good evening. Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Supervisors, my name is Terry Fellinger, and I'm a Code Enforcement Officer with Spotsylvania Building Safety Department. The department received a complaint concerning an unsafe structure located at 16540 Daysbridge Road in Spotsylvania County. The property is owned by Melvina Holiday Estate Trust. I investigated the complaint and found an unoccupied single-family dwelling that had heavy damage from a large oak tree limb that had fallen on the residence, and it literally flattened one side of the home and cause the remaining portion to be uninhabitable and impacting the structural integrity of the remaining portions. Staff has determined the structure to be unsafe. I think there's pictures attached in your packet. Staff has attempted to contact all the remaining heirs of this property via phone call and certified letters. One of the heirs actually came in and applied for a permit to have the structure demolished. And after no work had started, I spoke to the applicant, and he told me he just could not afford the expense of having the home removed at this time. To date, no measures have been taken to make the property safe. What you have before you is a resolution to have the structure removed, repaired, or secured to protect public health and safety. If the owners fail to act in accordance with the resolution, staff recommends that the structure be removed. Myself and staff are available for any questions you might have at this time.
Are there any questions from the board? Mr. Skinner.
Sir, how have you got involved? We had one over on Benchmark Road similar to this that was not in good shape. Has the health department come out and looked at it and claimed it a health hazard?
The health department has been to this property and declared it a nuisance.
Okay. So okay, could you explain what a nuisance is then? Vice,
No,
dangerous?
I don't work for the health department, so I'm not sure what nuisance, I know my jurisdiction, I'm an agent of the board, and I go out and this definitely is an unsafe structure. So I'm only an agent of the board, and that's my recommendation to you. As far as a nuisance from the health department, I'm not really sure what a nuisance is.
Well, the only reason I bring that up is because it would be positive if the health department would say, yes, if they're calling it a nuisance, what can we do? Can they require them to fix it, get it safely, or, because that's what I'm saying, we were able to tear the building down. The owner had a choice to either, or be in contempt, to be honest with you. So they decided to tear it down. And I'm just trying to help the process, because I agree, this should not be standing, because we don't know what type of children go out there and play, and if it ever does collapse, it's going to kill them.
That's our concern. If you looked at the pictures in the packet there, it's pretty, it's ready to fall down. I checked it again today, and it's even more dilapidated with the rain and whatnot and the wind we've had. So our recommendation, I know I've gotten 3 estimates to have it removed, with the lowest being about $12,850. As far as repair, an engineer, the owner did employ an engineer to look at the building, and he said it's not feasible. It's just not feasible to fix it. It's beyond repair at this time. The property value, it's 0.53 acres, and the assessed value is about $23,400 for the acreage, but the improvements is zero. So on the tax assessment, the whole property is worth $23,400. So our recommendations is to knock it down.
Sure. Mr. Benton?
Yeah, this started out with me, I believe, if I'm speaking correctly, and I appreciate everybody from zoning that's been involved in this. I know it's in the county attorney's office who's been involved in this. This has been an ordeal. It's lasted over a year. I know it's over a year.
Yes, 1 year.
When I first got the call on this, it was a group of owners across the street that had been seeing kids around the structure. That was their first concern. And then about its overall condition. They were worried about the kids getting in there and it actually collapsing or something going on that, illegal activity, et cetera, like that, because it is wide open. And I guess through the investigation, like I say, this is not just a one-owner thing. It's a trust fund or something like that.
There's eight owners that we've traced and communicated with.
And I've been following the updates on this almost monthly because I have gotten more calls from the citizens in that area saying, what's going on. And like I say, not only eyesore, but definitely a safety issue. It's in my district. This has been going on for over a year. And I just hope my fellow board members will support the county in taking this thing down.
Mr. Stabila.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand in looking through the information provided that this property has passed by inheritance back in 1970. Have the taxes been paid regularly on this property up until this time?
Yes, as far as, I've spoken to the owners, actually, the heir, Frank, has passed, and his wife, Queen, is 98, I think. She's bedridden in D.C., and I've spoken to her several times. She said that they have paid the taxes to this point, so there is no tax liens that I know against the property.
So there's no tax lien on it, and is the property wholly owned by them and not by a financial institution?
That's correct.
I've had a similar situation in Berkeley District, and
I was involved in that, sir.
yeah. So you know where I'm coming from on that. I agree we need to do this, and I will support the resolution. But I'm concerned that if we tear this down, the property's worth 23, and you're saying we can do it for about 12, 13.
Well, the estimates, I called 3 excavating companies, and they did go out and look at it, and they haven't, they did give me all estimates of taking it to the landfill, the whole ball of wax, getting rid of it, seed, straw, put it back to normal. So I'm sure there's something, maybe we can get with the landfill, and one of the gentlemen did say if the landfill will take it, I'll work something out where I don't charge it the land, we'll work together. So, but those are the estimates that I have at this point, and I'm sure I could speak to somebody at Mr. Lovejoy, I think it is, and or maybe the county administrator, somebody could talk to him.
Yeah. Since it looks like it would be a positive cash flow to the county if we did put a lien on it and had to take the property, so that's where I was coming from and looking at it.
Knocked houses down before and placed a lien, and when the property sold, we got our money. So and I think Carl, you can attest to that. That's happened before. Okay.
Yeah, that's what happens. We have a lien placed. We don't make money on it. We just get the money back that we
Right. Okay, well, thank you. So I certainly support your resolution.
Mr. This is just a clarification. So this is in Orange, Virginia? Is that the little town in Spotsylvania?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's in Spotsylvania County, but the address is Orange.
Orange, Virginia, okay. So. All right, thanks.
Any other discussion?
I'd make a motion to approve the resolution.
Okay, any other discussion? We're going to do a roll call vote at the recommendation of our attorney. Mr. Skinner?
Aye.
Dr. Trampy?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Aye.
Mr. Stabila? Aye. Mr. Jakubowski?
Aye.
The chair is aye.
And that brings us to the presentation and discussion on zoning notices. Thank you, Leon.
Very welcome. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. May I have a floor computer, please? This is a work session or discussion on the questions and concerns raised by citizens about the notification procedures for public hearing cases. I will briefly discuss the community meeting guidelines, the Code of Virginia notice requirements, and staff recommendations related to the community guidelines. Currently, we have a community meeting guidelines that encourage all applicants to follow for public hearing cases, SUPs, and rezonings. These guidelines are 100% voluntary, with the applicant having no obligation to adhere to them. Staff encourages applicants to use these guidelines when conducting community meetings with the intent of introducing proposals to the community in a format that allows an exchange of information between the applicant and the public. The meetings are sponsored and arranged by the applicant. They usually occur prior to the filing of an application to allow the applicant to address any comments or concerns that are raised at the meeting. The current guidelines have notice suggestions to reach the targeted citizens. And currently the Planning Department posts notices of the community meetings on the Planning Department webpage. The notice recommendations are based on the intensity of the proposed project. Staff is suggesting changes to the guidelines to incorporate the proposed standards, and I'll quickly explain the graphic. Starting at the top, projects with minor impacts provide an informational letter. These are projects that are usually for uses in areas that have existing zoning and uses that are compatible with what is being requested. For SUPs and existing structures, there's a mailing radius of 500 feet. This would typically be for a home enterprise type use. For SUP proposals that will generate fewer than 50 peak hour trips with impacts limited to the immediate area, the current proposed guideline is a 1,000 foot radius. For SUP proposals that generate between 50 and 100 peak hour trips and have the potential for impact on a larger area, the current guidance is a 2,000 foot radius. It is recommended that a notice in the newspaper be added with the mailings. For SUPs for telecommunication towers, it is proposed that the radius be increased to 3,000 feet with the newspaper notice. This is an increase in the radius by 1,000 feet. For rezoning proposals that generate 50 peak hour trips, fewer than 50 peak hour trips, and the impacts are limited to the immediate area, it is recommended that the current 1,000 foot radius remain the standard. For rezoning proposals that generate 50 to 100 peak hour trips, the current guidance is a 2,000 foot radius. For the proposed standard is 2,000 with the addition of a newspaper notice. And for rezoning and SUPs that generate over 100 peak hour trips, it is proposed that the standard be 3,000 feet with a newspaper notice. The significant change in these proposals is that a proposal with lower trip generation of 50 peak hour trips per hour will meet the increased notice standard. In the current guidance, the trip generation threshold is 100 peak hours, 100 peak hour trips for the increased notice. When a rezoning or special use case is scheduled for a public hearing, the Code of Virginia requires notice be given for 2 consecutive weeks in a newspaper of general circulation, and letters be mailed only to the adjacent property owners. In addition to the property owners of a planned unit development or a public or a property unit association in condominium projects. Options for the county to consider: expanding the required mail notice to a distance greater than the adjacent owners. If this option is the pleasure of the board, staff would recommend a consistent measure for all cases. A second consideration is the additional cost to the county, to include staff resources, the increased potential for error in missing an address, and if a standard distance is not the norm, then the possible appearance of arbitrary mailing requirements. These additional costs will be borne by the county. In order to implement a larger mailing distance, Section 23-4.2.1 notice requirements in the zoning ordinance will need to be amended as it currently mirrors the Code of Virginia. In addition to the Code of Virginia requirements for notice, Spotsylvania requires that a sign be posted on the subject parcel at least 15 days prior to a public hearing. These signs are provided by the county, and applicants are required to submit an affidavit of the posting. There are challenges with these signs as they are lightweight and are subject to damage with inclement weather and are not very big. And this is the sign that we currently use right now. As you can see, it's simply paper. The county could consider the purchase of metal signs, similar to real estate signs. However, these bring their own sets of challenges. The cost is about $70 to $5 per sign, and they require space for storage. They would require staff time to have them posted on the property and retrieved from the property in each case. And speaking from experience, these signs are subject to vandalism and theft. They become targets for bored people, I guess. In an effort to increase public awareness about public hearing cases, staff will have a link posted on the county's webpage with a sign icon, very similar to the one I showed you here. that when clicked will direct citizens to the planning department page that will have links to the status of active cases with case materials accessible. In addition, staff will increase the social media presence by placing information on Facebook and Twitter, and also use the cable access channel for information as well. So actions needed tonight. Staff is asking the board to adopt the community meeting guidelines in your packet. Its staff's recommendation is to stay with the yellow zoning notices signs and increase information available on the web and on social media. Staff is also seeking guidance on the board's preference on increasing the required mailed notice distance, and would like guidance on what radius would be preferred beyond the adjacent property owners. If it is the board's pleasure to increase the distance beyond the adjacent property owners, staff recommends a single distance for all applications. And lastly, this change will require a code amendment, and the county would also need to assume the additional costs for the larger mailings. This completes my presentation, and I'd happily answer any questions.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. McLaughlin.
I got a couple. One on the signs. Do you ever think about the plastic, like the campaign signs? They last forever and they're like $5. You know what I'm saying? The corrugated plastic, so maybe another option besides the paper. But, you know, one of the biggest complaints I think we get, or I'm sure everybody else gets them, is I wasn't notified, whether it was 500 feet or 1,000 feet. So I would support a standard greater than whether it's 2,500 or 3,000 feet, but what is the cost? Or is there an average cost? Can you tell us what it costs the county, and does that not pass on to the developer asking for the rezoning?
Well, I think, unfortunately, if we do anything above, and Carl, you can chime in here, if we do anything above what the code is required, then I think the county has to bear those costs. And as an example, the Sheets case, we did a 2,000-foot radius. There were 305 mailings. There would have been 305 additional mailings. So it would have cost the county $298.
To extend it out? Okay, thanks.
Just a really quick follow-on to that. So if we change the code, then it does go to the developer?
That additional cost would not go to the developer. Right.
Even if the code was changed to require a 3,000-foot? Are these state codes?
Okay. Yeah, it's in the Virginia code that it allows the county, if it wants to provide additional notice, but it's the county providing that notice. It's not something we can require.
Okay. Any other discussion items? Okay. Mr. Sebula.
Yeah, can we not, I mean, it's already on a webpage. I've gotten a lot of complaints about people not being notified of certain actions in the district. I think 3,000 feet for all of them would be reasonable. We need to look at the cost versus the public opinion and the public satisfaction. You know, if we're not looking at a large amount, I certainly suggest doing that. And I have a question. You talked about metal signs. Where would they be posted? How would they be posted? Would you stick them on telephone poles?
No, sir. Typically,
I hope not.
They act just as those real estate signs that you see posted on people's property. Essentially, it's a sign. It has two prongs on it. You plop it in the ground. But like I said, from experience, I can tell you that's going to be a recurring cost because those signs get vandalized and they disappear.
They sure do disappear.
Yes, we have these signs that disappear, and it's a minimal cost to go out and replace those.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Yakubowski.
Yes, thanks. I would be in favor of something that's uniformed of a distance. And then thinking about the signs, just that most people don't pay attention until they see a little yellow sign go up, and then they don't even, well, I shouldn't say they don't know. A lot of people don't know where to then go to find out. So I'm wondering if we could do a sign that would be very simplistic, that would just, like you have in your presentation from Albemarle, where it just says rezoning, public hearing, number, a website. Can we set up a separate website that would be just for these, that might be like we've done for the transportation projects, where you have a map, Because the other thing too is people, I won't remember what number it is, but I do know that it's at the corner of that road and the other road. So if and I know we can't do this overnight, but if we can get to that point where you can then see that sign is there, know that you can go to the website, make it something catchy, Spotsy rezoning or something like that, which is available, by the way, and go to that, and then it's listed there by map, by number. I wonder how much time that might save, too, from people calling the phone number, trying to get in touch with the staff person trying to understand where they're talking about, then looking it up. You know, we can point them to the web and let them go and do that, especially as we're becoming more and more web associated with what we do. I think pointing everything towards there would be good. But I would go for bigger signs. I know there's going to be a cost, but you know, there are ways to put signs in the ground that people don't want to pull them out. Having worked campaigns before, you can come up with some of those Vaseline on it and stuff like that where it's hard to get it out. But I just think that the bigger visual that you have, the more people will be inclined to then find out. And the one point that I do need to make that I think that we need to figure out a way to keep folks in the loop is that once we do that community meeting with that mailing, after that, what is the developer responsible for any, or what is the county responsible for? So if we're doing a 3,000-foot radius for the initial community meeting, but then everything else is, you know, adjacent property owners to let them know when the public hearings are for the planning commission and the county and the board, then we lose all the rest of those people who then they have to take it upon themselves to follow the project. And if we can point them to a website and say, here it is, it's project number 88, you know where it is, where the location is, follow the website, and they can stay involved in that way. Because when I go to community meetings, that first community meeting, I hear from so many people who say, well, who's going to contact me next to know when the planning commission meeting is? And I don't even know when it's going to be up for the planning commission, so how are they even going to find out? So anything we can do to make it easier and more accessible without expending staff time to do it, I think the better off we would be. Thank you.
Mr. Skinner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing I'm wondering, and again, this is just thrown out for the board, and that is on your SUPs for the telecommunication towers. I mean, that has effect. I mean, if it's a 100-foot tower, have we ever did a study as how far away from that tower? I wake up one morning, never saw a tower, and I see a tower there. And I think that's one of the issues we've heard from on the way of on Route 3, David. I think it was in your area. So are we satisfied that 3,000 feet for a tower that's 100 feet up in the air? How do we, you know, this, like I said, I don't have the answer, but I think it's something we need to consider in that one case, because it could very much affect the people. And as we've heard, some people says it affects the property value. So again, I don't have the answer, but I think it's something this board needs to come up with or say, we thought 3,000 foot was good. I think it's a little bit more than that. I don't know if we could get a figure out, you know, at an angle of 100 feet, where does the last person look at the tower or see the tower? Now, I know that's going to increase it by quite a little bit, and it would increase our costs. But I would like to know, Leon, do you understand my drift is everything else I'm fine with here, what everybody said, but I know that towers can affect you. And if we're going to put up a new tower, and it's going to become in the visibility of somebody, and I would think a 100-foot tower would be seen more than 300 feet away. 3,000 feet away. That's a half a mile, right? Pretty close to it.
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Mr. Yakubowski.
And that's kind of my point with the website, is that if people get used to checking it out, and then you can eventually sign up like we do for Spotsy alerts, and there might, you know, put in your email, there's an alert that goes out that there's a new addition to the page. You know, something like that where we can do it, and it's very easy to do it once you have the program set up. And then then you cut down on your cost of having to try to make sure that you got to every single person that might be affected by a cell tower, because with that, you have the topography of the land, you have the tree height. I mean, you have just so many things that might come into play. And if you set it as a standard for one, it might not be good enough for another. That would be my only concern. So I think if we can direct them to the web, the better off we'll be, especially in the long run.
So, Mr. Chair, so again, I think everybody kind of agrees that the numbers need to be further out. And I don't know whether 3,000 is the right distance across, because some of them I don't disagree with Mr. Skinner. I just don't know that we can set that right now. I'd like us to go forward. I'd like to motion 3,000 feet as a standard across for all the rezonings, and we can come back later and look at cell towers based on what we see. And then with that, I'd potentially come back later to the board with a recommendation on the sign, whether it's paper, plastic, or something, or, you know, Mr. Yakimov's special sign, but something back different to the board. So I'd like to leave it at that.
Okay. Any other discussion? I'd like to thank Mrs. Toy for bringing this up to my attention. And I mean, it's a spot on point, and Mr. McLaughlin did steal all my questions. But I think when I don't want to lose momentum on it, and I'm going to support Mr. McLaughlin's motion, but I think there's a lot of unknowns that we left out there. We had a lot of good ideas that came up. The sign thing in particular, the corrugated plastic for $2,000, we could buy a whole bunch that stand out way better than ours. And if they get stolen, it's okay. Not that we want them stolen. But I would like, along with that motion, then I'd like to rediscuss this maybe at our second meeting in October. So we bring it back to the board, maybe with some cost information on signs, different kinds of signs. I think the ideas of having Spotsy alert to notify people is great. Also, I'm not sure if we have these public meetings at the beginning, whether we can collect email addresses there for anybody that wants to be notified and then notify them after. I don't think we do that. That'd be something good to do as well, which is, you know, very reasonable cost. Doesn't really cost us anything other than plugging those emails in. So with that, we have a motion on the floor with if a friendly amendment that we'll also bring back on the second meeting in October to rediscuss kind of some more issues with it. Any other discussion? I'm going to do a voice vote. The ayes? Aye. Any nays? The ayes have it.
Yeah.
That'll be back second meeting in October. Next on the agenda, board members, at your last meeting, the public hearing was held in the matter of the disposition of the surplus property we refer to as the back 40 behind the IDX plant, was tabled to this meeting. While no action is absolutely required on the matter at all, and if no action is taken, then the surplus property will go to the EDA. I think the preference for the lawyers and the staff working on the project to be able to get the documents done in advance to make the closing smooth, if the board would be inclined to make a motion in either that the surplus property would come to the Board of Supervisors, or that it would be allowed to pass to the EDA. That clarity, I think, would be helpful to the process of completing the transaction. And would note also in the agreement that it is expressly provided in paragraph 23 that no matter which entity holds and markets the property, that any final disposition, whether it's sale, lease, or license, and the future development of that surplus property comes back for the express approval of this body, you, the Board of Supervisors. So with that, this is ripe for action if you're inclined to take action.
Mr. Chair, so if I read this right, if we do nothing, it transfers the EDA. So there's no motion required to let it go as it is.
That's correct. I was just going to follow up on what Marc was saying. We have a resolution to exercise the option if the county does want to take it. We've also added, just for the board's convenience, if it desires to, a resolution which essentially says that the board is declining at this time to exercise the option, and that Marc can go ahead and let the EDA and the company know to prepare to go ahead and transfer it to the EDA. It still does leave open the possibility that you still could do it, but it kind of tees things up for them. It also, that vote also gets this off your docket, because Marc would probably just keep this on until y'all do nothing, or you know, if you do something, it at least gets it off the docket for the next meeting. But again, that's up to you all.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Skinner.
A quick question for the attorney. So still, if we do nothing, it goes to the EDA, and either way we do it, we're going to have the final say of when that property goes to somebody.
That's correct. This is expressly provided for in the purchase and sale agreement, which the county signed, the EDA signed, and the company signed. So the EDA is contractually bound to bring anything back to the county before it does anything with it. So Marc was correct in his statement.
Any other discussion?
Motion to recommend no action.
Is this to adopt the second resolution, which simply says that we're declining to exercise it at this time, and the EDA and the company should prepare to close? Okay.
Any other discussion? The ayes?
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Cole, addressing the issue of the Government and Military Affairs Committee.
Thank you, members of the board. And I sent you an email with this information last week, but for years, Spotsylvania County has participated in the Fredericksburg Regional Military Affairs Council or Committee, the MAC, in the area. And the MAC was stood up probably more than 12, 15 years ago to try to help defend the area's military bases during the BRAC closure process. And so that was its main purpose when it was founded. It has continued to try to be an advocate for the military bases, and also to try to enhance their standing within the military community, so that if there is ever a future BRAC, the bases will be on good standing. The MAC used to partner with the Fredericksburg Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce was actually their fiscal agent. And earlier, I guess it was this year or late last year, the Chamber and the MAC kind of had a parting of ways. And the MAC is still an independent organization, and they're still meeting and so forth. And the Chamber stood up a subcommittee within the Chamber called the Government and Military Affairs Committee, the GMAC. And the Chamber kind of just assumed, since we were members of the MAC, that we were also members of the GMAC. And the GMAC focus is, my understanding, is going to be a little bit more broad than the MAC focus, in that it's also going to try to focus on ancillary issues to the military bases, such as issues that may be important to the defense contractor community and those that do business with or on military facilities. So anyways, I brought this to your all's attention. The board, like I said, the county is participating in the MAC and has made appointments, a representative and an alternate to the MAC. However, there has been no appointments made to the GMAC. There is no cost per se to participate in the GMAC, since we are members of the Chamber of Commerce. They said we could participate without any cost. However, there are what they call investment opportunities where they have different levels that we could invest in, starting at $150 and on up to $5,000 to support the GMAC operations through the Chamber. The MAC has a very similar kind of dues structure. It starts at $150 and goes on up to, I think, $5,000 or $10,000. And historically, the county has provided $2,500 each year to the MAC in recent years. Currently, in the current budget, the 2018 fiscal year budget, the board did approve a budget item of $2,500 for the MAC and also $150 for the GMAC. So those are currently in the budget. They have not been expensed or paid yet, but they are in the budget. So we just need some guidance from the board as to whether or not you want to, one, continue your participation in the MAC, and also do you want to also participate in the Chamber GMAC. If you wanted to participate in the Chamber GMAC, we would need to, I'd recommend that you all make appoint a representative to the GMAC so that, you know, we have somebody there that can attend the meetings and so forth.
Okay. Discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Why are there two committees? Why can't they have one committee doing the same function?
I'm not privy to all the internal decisions and so forth. What I've been told is that the Chamber wanted to expand the focus of the MAC to, like I said, include contractor issues and things like that, and the leadership of the MAC did not want to do that.
Does one work for the other, or is there?
No.
So the MAC is independent completely?
MAC is an independent body. Now, the Chamber was their fiscal agent, and they were kind of partners in the effort to try to save the area bases from the BRAC process. However, the MAC is its own organization, where the GMAC is actually a subcommittee within the Chamber.
What do they actually do with the $2,500 we give them? I mean,
Well,
what do they do right now, since no base closings have?
Well, they do host events. They try to promote the bases. You know, they were helpful in trying to get Mary Washington College to establish a campus out at Dahlgren. During the last BRAC process, the area base that was probably most at jeopardy was Dahlgren. And so they have done work to try to provide community support to the area bases and so forth. But I can get the MAC to provide you with a specific list of things they have done, and also a projected schedule of events of what they want to do in the future.
Yeah, I'd like that, if you will.
Dr. Trampy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So essentially, two organizations which were tied together have split apart, and one, the parent organization, has created a new one to compete with their former partner. I feel we are, you know, we had nothing to do with this. We're members of MAC. We've been paying a certain level of dues. I would suggest we continue that. We didn't create this split. If we do join GMAC, I don't support a sponsorship, they're calling it, any additional funds. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Skinner.
All right. Being formerly on the MAC, and what I saw when I was on it is that we really prepared ourselves for the BRAC, and that was the most important thing, because if we lose a base, it'll be devastating to all the surrounding communities, and therefore their focus was strictly watching when the BRAC would come up. Also including some of those things, we'd have a lobbyist or we'd have people talking up in D.C. as far as fighting for us for Dahlgren and stuff like that. And I think that's where our priority should be. we've been on MAC, and my understanding is the GMAC now is taken a little further, other than just, I guess maybe investments and stuff of this nature. But I would completely support the MAC, because if we lose Dahlgren, AP Hill, or Quantico, being a bread and breakfast community here, we're going to, our properties, it's going to be very difficult for us. So I'm not real interested in going in GMAC right now, especially until I find out that if what they exactly do, a good specification, what their objectives are and stuff of that nature. But I will tell you, being on the MAC, that the sole focus was during a BRAC period that we would convince or show how valuable that base is, and that's why the schools were put down there at Dahlgren and stuff of that nature. So I would support what Mr. Trampier said, and stick with the MAC for right now, and we can always join the GMAC if we find it in the future, but I think it's important to stick with the MAC. That's going to hurt us the most if we lose any base.
Any other discussion? Mr. Yakubowski?
Just a quick question. What's everybody else doing?
The MAC is, I have attended a couple of their meetings since the split, and they seem to be holding on to at least most of their membership. I think for right now, they're still a viable committee. The GMAC, again, I'm not speaking against it or anything like that, but it does have the chamber backing too. So, I suspect that it will also be a viable organization. I don't know if down the road the two may end up mending their ways or whatever and come back together or not. I know the GMAC, it's probably a month or so ago, they had their first event with Congressman Whitman. I think it was a breakfast with Congressman Whitman out at the country club. I mean, they are, standing up and trying to move forward as well. So,
yeah. Mr. Sebula.
Yeah, as the appointee to the MAC, I fully intend to honor that duty and stay as the representative to the MAC. I don't want to belong to two committees. I don't want to be a MAC appointee and a GMAC appointee. I think at any time we can also, as members of the chamber, become, and they would welcome the county to be members of the GMAC. And that should not involve any cost, but it would involve an appointment. So my recommendation is that we leave things as they are, and in the future, if we want to become a part, be involved as a county with the GMAC, that we certainly could do that.
Any other discussion? Sounds like I'm looking for a motion that we would remain a member of the MAC and that we would not participate in GMAC.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd also make sure that we're going to rescind the $150 that we have allocated to the GMAC. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, if you don't want to participate in it, we won't, expend that money.
Okay. Can I ask that you hold that portion of it until we actually see what the GMAC does? We've asked for a response to give us a little bit more in details what the GMAC does. And then once we find out that, yes, they're either similar and we just need to be with the MAC, I'd rather just hold that. It's not a big deal. It's only $150 right now, so I'd like to hold that back if we could, Mr.
We're not going to issue the $150 because we're not going to participate in the GMAC.
Well, we don't know that yet because we asked for a discussion as far as what does the GMAC do different from the MAC.
But my understanding the motion right now was not to participate in the GMAC.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I go along with that.
Yeah,
I just don't want the money rescinded yet in case we find this stuff out and we want to do it. That's all. If that's just my
Okay, I understand. I just want to make sure we don't send a check for $150 to an organization aren't playing. And again, I was also going to ask that both of those committees come in and brief the board on what they do in the future meeting. Because I don't know that Mac's ever briefed us.
Don't think they have.
So.
Okay. So I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Okay. And any other discussion? Call the question, the ayes?
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it.
Next item, Mr. Chairman, board members, is a discussion of a proposed amendment to the board bylaws. This is a bylaws amendment suggestion brought forward by Chairman Ross and was discussed at your last meeting and asked to be put on the agenda for this evening.
And Mr. Ross, Mr. Chair, members of the board, if I may, what Susan handed out earlier is the latest version of the revisions that our office has worked with staff to recommend. The previous version you had with those changes identified unless otherwise required by Virginia law. We've expanded that to include unless otherwise required by law. This will account for the shot clock for a telecommunications tower, which is under the Federal Telecommunications Act. So what you have before you is the latest recommended changes by our office. We, of course, don't advocate on the action one way or the other, but if the board does wish to adopt this change, we recommend this latest version. Thank you.
Let me just open up with saying this is not prompted by any other reason than I was having a conversation with Bob Thomas, who is on the Stafford County Board of Supervisors, just informally, just talking about the differences between our boards, and this topic came up, and I thought it was a great idea that we should have in our bylaws. And also, for clarification for the public, it will take 5 votes for any change in our bylaws to happen. So with that, are there any discussion? Mr. Skinner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've looked over it, and the way I feel about this is very simply, I was elected for a 4-year term, and I would not want to give up my rights to proceed with something that I thought would be very important to my district or to the county. And, you know, I hope that I have the integrity and the knowledge and stuff of that to make a good decision whether I've got 2 months left on this board or 1 month on this board. So I cannot support this.
Any other discussion? Mr. Sibula.
And without repeating things for the same reasons, I can't support it.
Any other discussion? Mr. Yakubowski.
Thank you. And no, I don't want to repeat it either, but I don't see the need for it. I don't understand why we would want to, you know, basically remove 2 months from our board term. And if we were to do something like this, we should just eliminate the last 2 months of an election year and have no board meetings at all. So I don't support it. Thanks.
Any other discussion? I'll just bring up what it does. Mr. McLaughlin, did you have something?
No, this is a bylaw change, correct?
Correct.
Does it require 2/3?
Yes.
5 votes?
Yes, it does.
So we don't have 5 votes? Okay.
It looks like it's not going to pass. I'd still like to bring it to the floor, and maybe we can discuss it again. What this does, though, it doesn't really prevent anything from happening. It just is more of a planning thing. Most of these, what this is talking about are land use rezonings and things, and we can definitely plan to have those before the elections, and it's every other year, I guess. So I'm definitely going to support this. It has nothing to do with this year's elections, but I would definitely support this in 2019, which would be my last term, or last year of my current term. So I do think what it does, and I'm not throwing out any accusations here, but it prevents, it prevents an election being run and saying one thing, and then after the election doing another, which I think protects our constituents. Again, in general, nothing to have anything to do with anything right now. So with that, I'll motion to approve a change in the bylaws. I think we're going to need a roll, as amended in the red line copy before us. I think we need a roll call vote. Mr. Yakubowski?
No.
Mr. Sibula? Mr. McLaughlin?
No.
Mr. Benton?
Yay.
Dr. Trampy?
Aye.
Mr. Skinner?
No.
And the chair is aye, so it fails. Thank you.
Next are informational matters. I have one item, and that is a reminder that we are hosting the Civilian Military Quarterly event that is coming up next week on Tuesday, September 19th, 7 to 9 p.m. at the Lodge at Stevenson's Ridge. I don't have a note on any feedback from board members on anticipated attendance, but we hope to see you all there, and I'll have Nikki sending out additional reminders the end of this week. 7 p.m. And again, that's next Tuesday, a week from tonight, the 19th.
I do believe the RSVP date officially is the 15th of September.
All right, so Friday would be timely for us to know. Carl, did you have anything?
No report.
Okay. Board reports, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Yakubowski. Okay. Mr. Sebula.
No report.
Mr. McLaughlin.
No report.
Mr. Benton.
No report.
Dr. Champy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple items I will discuss with our VDOT representative tomorrow. He was here tonight for one specific project, so I didn't bring this up at that time. First, I've had inquiries as to why there is no school safety zone along Harrison Road, where the entrance to Harrison Road Elementary, Chancellor Middle, and Chancellor High School is. Maybe there's a reason I'm not aware of, but if not, I'd like to discuss with our staff and with VDOT the possibility of putting in a school zone with a lower speed limit there. And I've also had concerns raised about safety at the Harrison Road and Old Plank intersection. And I want to talk with VDOT about the possibility of perhaps a no U-turn sign or a left turn signal, and what their information is, what their data is as far as the safety there, if there have been accidents and so forth. That's all I have at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Skinner.
Just one last thing to follow up with, Paul, is we seem to drop off now on our VDOT reports. And once we used to have every first Tuesday, our first meeting, we'd always get a VDOT report. Then we lost it, and now again today, it's not. I'd like to understand why we don't have a regular VDOT report on our first meeting of every month.
Follow up on that, Mr. Skinner. My recollection offhand was that we had shifted either to quarterly or every other month for those reports. But
Well,
I will talk with Sean about timeliness and what works.
Well, I never support that because I think it's important to keep up on the VDOT, especially in localities where we have special problems and stuff of that nature. But I'm not sure what the other feeling about the board is, but I think we need it at least once a month.
Okay. And the chair has just a couple things. The Homeowners Association at the retreat for Chancellorsville, I just sent this over to you, Mark, has asked that we do something that would allow the sheriff's deputies into their area to enforce traffic or the speed limit. So, Carl, I just sent it over to you. You can check into that. I've exchanged several emails about construction of water drainage on Rollingwood Drive, and I think the county was saying that was kind of in VDOT's hands, and VDOT approved it. And I did talk to Sean Nelson this week, and he said they don't really look into drainage that goes into our residents' yards. So I would like to regroup on that with staff, because what's happening over there with some new construction off of Rollingwood Drive is creating drainage issues in that neighborhood. And I think I sent you, I think even some of our own code that discourages from that. And then I'd just like an update on the status of the Waverly Village draining issue that we had that we're moving forward on, but I think it's stalled for some reason. So if I could get updates on all those things, I'd be grateful.
Yes, sir.
And that's it for board reports.
Carl, if you would read us into closed session, see if we can do that quickly.
This will be your closed session resolution. Whereas the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors desires to adjourn into closed meeting for discussion or consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose or the disposition of publicly held real property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body, specifically discussion of real property in the Berkeley District. And whereas the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors desires to adjourn into closed meeting for discussion concerning a prospective business or industry or the expansion of an existing business or industry where no previous announcement has been made of the businesses or industry's interest in locating or expanding its facilities in the community, specifically a beverage manufacturing business and a healthcare business. And whereas pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2, 3711, A3 and 5, such discussions may occur in closed meeting. Now therefore be it resolved that the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors does hereby authorize discussion of the aforestated matters.
So moved.
Called the question, the ayes?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it.
Your resolution to return to open meeting. Whereas the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors has convened a closed meeting on this day pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2, 3712D of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by this board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law, now therefore be it resolved that the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors hereby returns to open meeting and certifies by roll call vote that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion to convene into closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting.
Mr. Yakubowski.
Aye.
Mr. Sebula.
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Aye.
Mr. Benton.
Aye.
Dr. Trampy.
Aye.
Mr. Skinner.
Aye.
The chair is aye.
That brings us to public presentations. Amy, has anyone signed up?
Yes, sir.
Run briefly through the guidelines for public presentations, which are an opportunity for citizens to present matters you believe deserve the board's attention. These presentations are not part of a public hearing. Sign up to speak at each public hearing is separate. Public presentations are one-way communication from you to the Board of Supervisors. This is not a forum for dialogue or debate. To make a public presentation, please sign up on the sign-up sheet and please print clearly. Come to the lectern when your name is called. Clearly state your name, address, and voting district for our record. Address your comments directly to the board. State whether you are speaking on your own behalf, in which case you'll have 3 minutes, or on behalf of a group, in which case you'll have 5. Public presentations shall not be used to address matters that are subject to public hearings or to make political campaign speeches, private advertisements, or personal attacks. And as always, your written comments are welcomed by the Board of Supervisors. Amy, who's first?
Nancy Cole.
Good evening, Board. There's not many people here tonight, and a lady here who has come, Susan Green, has offered her time to me. Would you accept that?
Mr. Chair, just to remind you, the bylaws don't allow people to give time to each other, but with the unanimous vote of all the members, anybody can give an extension to the 3 minutes that are normally required. And also, just so Ms. Cole is familiar, if there's something scheduled for a public hearing tonight, that's not something she can speak to right now. I don't know what you're speaking to, but just wanted to.
Oh, this is for Barrington. Am I not? I wondered.
Yes, there'll be a public hearing where you'll
later.
be able to correct, ma'am.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But you're welcome to speak about anything else right now if you'd like to.
No.
Okay.
There are no other citizens signed up.
Is there anybody that didn't sign up for public presentation time that would like to speak at this time? Okay, we'll close public presentation time.
That does bring us to public hearing R17-0003, Gloria C. Bear and L. Eugene Bear, Barrington subdivision, ordinance number RO17-0003.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a rezoning request of 197 acres from rural to planned residential rural 2 with proffers for Barrington, which is a single-family detached residential neighborhood of 39 lots, located on the north side of River Road, just west of the intersection with Spotswood Furnace Road. To provide a little history of this property, this was once part of a larger tract of land where 9 of the 10 by right units were platted to create the Woodland Manor subdivision. That was a by right subdivision. It left this remnant parcel of approximately 197 acres. It has one by right development unit currently, so to increase that development potential, the rezoning request is necessary. The Planning Commission held a public hearing for this request on August 16th and voted 4-3 to recommend denial of the request, noting concerns that the project would generate additional traffic on River Road. Staff does recommend approval of RO17-003 with the proffer statement dated July 18th, 2017, included in your packet. First map before you is the zoning map with the property outlined in red. You'll see from this map the property has frontage on both Spotswood Furnace Road and River Road. It's completely surrounded by other rural zoned properties, including the large lot subdivisions, including the estates at Chancellorsville. Here's Woodland Manor. Here is a almost 500-acre tract of land here to the north and about a 100-acre tract here to the south. The second map here is the future land use map. The property is designated for rural residential, as is the surrounding area. This calls for a density, promotes a density of 1 unit per 2 acres. The Barrington development is proposing a density of 1 unit per 5 acres, which is also consistent with the River Overlay Protection District. Here's a zoomed in aerial of the property. You'll see that it's heavily forested. This is actually a regrowth as the property has been timbered at least twice in the past. These are the power lines that run on the edge here and through this upper portion of the property. Here's the generalized development plan, which shows the layout for Barrington and the 39 single-family detached lots. The lots range in size from 2 to 3 acres. They'll be served by private well and septic. There are going to be public roads throughout the development, and to meet VDOT's secondary street acceptance requirements, they have reserved a future connection point here to that undeveloped 500-acre tract of land. Highlighted in green is a 100-foot scenic buffer. This exceeds the district requirements by 25 feet. This buffer, it'll have existing trees and vegetation where it'll preserve that rural view shed along River Road. Into the development, here highlighted in orange, is a 100-foot right turn taper. And the property will have over 107 acres in open space. Within this open space are all of the environmentally sensitive areas, your wetlands, RPAs. There's a Small World Begonia was surveyed on the property. That's within this open space area, as well as Civil War earthworks that are highlighted here in yellow, all of which is included in this one open space, which will be maintained by the HOA and will be preserved in perpetuity. At the Planning Commission meeting, there were concerns raised about non-point source pollution to the Rappahannock River and to the LaRoque and Pipe Run Dam. And just as information, should this rezoning request be approved, it will go through the site plan review and approval process. And as part of that site plan, they'll have to have a stormwater management plan as part of that. And this site will have to contain and treat its runoff on site. Staff's not identified any concerns with non-point source pollution. The applicant did provide a traffic impact analysis The scope of this analysis was reviewed and approved by our traffic engineer, and the analysis was reviewed by our traffic engineer, who concurred with the results. The analysis estimates that the project will generate a total of 490 vehicle trips per day. 390 of those are for Barrington itself. 100 of those trips are to account for the 10 by right lots for that future connection of the 500-acre tract of land to the north. The intersection there at River Road and Spotswood Furnace currently operates at a level of service A in both the AM and PM peak periods. At build-out with Barrington, at build-out, the level of service in the AM will remain an A, and it will be reduced to a B in the PM. DMV records show for this segment of River Road, which is within 500 feet of the intersection of River Road and Spotswood Furnace Road, there were 5 collisions between 2013 and 2015. This isn't a high number or a number that would warrant any sort of signalization of that intersection. And based on the low number of trips that will be generated, there were no transportation improvements that were required with this proposal. However, the applicant has included a 100-foot right turn taper into the development. At the Planning Commission, questions were raised about the distribution of traffic, so we've inserted this slide just to give you a snapshot. This is the existing volumes on River Road. You can see that the bulk of the traffic is traveling on River Road, going east in the AM, 58%, and 59% going west in the PM. You'll recall that I mentioned in the PM peak with Barrington at build-out, that level of service would be reduced from an A to a B. And what's triggering that is that there's an overall 2-second delay at the intersection. That's what's triggering that reduction in the level of service. Staff's analysis of the project's consistency with the comprehensive plan broke out each component, identified the level of service associated with that component, and then quantified what Barrington's impact would be. You'll see the breakout of what elements the project is consistent and those which staff identified an impact. To start, Barrington is consistent with the land use element with the proposed density of 1 unit per 5 acres. For transportation, the level of service standard for roads outside of the primary development boundary is a level of service C, and with this project, the level of service would be an A or a B. For public facilities, there was no impact for schools as there's existing capacity at Chancellor Elementary, Chancellor Middle, and Riverbend, which this project would be districted for. No level of service issue with the Sheriff's Office. The project will be served with private well and septic, so no impact to water and sewer. And the county is exceeding the level of service standards for library facilities. The project was consistent with historic resources and natural resources goals in that it's mitigating the impact to those resources and protecting those within the open space area. The only thing that was noted was that studies have shown, and those were related, I think, to the Outer Connector study several years ago, that there were potentially archaeological resources in this vicinity. To date, there's no survey that's been done on this property, so that's not confirmed at this time. There were a few public facilities which staff did identify impacts. First was fire rescue and emergency services. The project will be served by Station 5, which does have a capacity to accommodate the development. However, the overall level of service standard for FREM facilities is 1 station per capita, for 1 to 11,000 per capita. The county's current ratio is 1 to 12,000. With that, there is in the CIP an identified project. It's a fire training facility. This would be a countywide facility, and the applicant has proffered a cash contribution to mitigate their impact to that, and I'll go into more detail in that later. Second, parks and recreation. There are levels of service standards set out for recreation facilities per capita, and 11 out of 13 of those facilities the county was not meeting. That included tennis courts, swimming pools, passive recreation, playground equipment. The CIP does include several projects including a Marshall Center's auditorium upgrade, Patriot Park Playground, Belmont Passive Park, Nye River. And the applicant has proffered a cash contribution to mitigate their impact on those facilities. And again, I'll go into more detail on that in the proffer section. The project did fall short in meeting the level of service standard for solid waste. The level of service standard is that a convenience center should be within 5 miles of the population it serves, and Barrington will actually be 6.5 miles from both the Wilderness and Chancellor convenience centers. The applicant provided a fiscal impact analysis. It showed that Barrington would generate $244,000 in revenue for the county. That accounted for on-site and off-site revenue. The county conducted our own analysis using our model. We used a comparable development named River Glen, and coincidentally, that's a development that was done with the applicants for Barrington. The average assessed value for the River Glen homes is $557,083. And with that, the county's model estimated that Barrington would generate $106,000 annually at build-out. So the important takeaway from this is while the county is predicting less revenue than the applicant, both of those analyses are trending positive. The applicants have provided a proffer statement dated July 18th for your consideration. Staff evaluated the proposed proffers according to the parameters established by the Virginia Code, consistency with the comprehensive plan's level of service, and identified projects within the county's 2018-2022 capital improvements plan. I've broken out here for you the proffers into 2 categories, those being on-site and off-site. The on-site proffers, per the definition in the Virginia State Code, are those that address impacts of the project within the boundaries of the property to be developed. Those include development in conformance with the Generalized Development Plan. The applicant proffered to limit the use of the property to residential. The PRR district has secondary uses such as a bed and breakfast. The applicant has proffered only the residential uses on this property. They will be creating an HOA and recording covenants and restrictions with this development. They're dedicating 30 feet of right-of-way along both Spotswood Furnace Road and River Road, and they will be preserving in perpetuity the open space, the 107 acres of open space. The off-site proffers, as defined by Virginia Code, are proffers that address an impact outside the boundaries of the property to be developed. An applicant may mitigate a project's impact on public facilities with a cash payment if the facility meets the definition of public facility per Virginia State Code, if the development impacts the capacity and levels of service, and if the development will receive a material benefit from the proffer made. As I just mentioned, the staff did identify that the project would have impact on those on the FREM facility, the new Fire Training Logistics Center. That's a county-wide facility. And the per capita cost for that project was $46.22 per unit. Also, the Parks and Recreation facilities, there were a number of projects listed in the CIP that I mentioned. Staff did identify Barrington to have a impact on those, as those are county-wide facilities. And the per capita cost for those improvements was $115.69 per unit. So the applicant has provided this cash contribution of $161.91 per unit. Those are for the 38 units that are above the by right yield. Staff's analysis of that these are reasonable and acceptable proffers, and the county attorney's office has concurred with that analysis. In summary, staff findings in favor that the project is consistent with the comprehensive plan with respect to the land use, transportation, public facility, and historic and natural resource goals. The cash contributions do mitigate the capital facility impacts. The project will include a 100-foot right turn taper on River Road, and the Barrington development is expected to generate positive revenue for the county at build-out, approximately $106,000. The findings against that Barrington does fall short in meeting the county's level of service standard for solid waste. They will be producing additional traffic on the larger county network. And although there is capacity at the schools now, Barrington will be generating a total of 22 additional students. And finally, that archaeological resources potentially exist on the property, and to date, no study has been done to confirm one way or the other. Again, the Planning Commission did recommend denial. Staff is recommending approval based on the consistency with the comprehensive plan. I'm happy to answer any questions, and Dan Cole, our traffic engineer, is here if you have any specific transportation questions.
Are there any questions from the board? Mr. Yakubowski.
Thank you. I just have two real quick. The 30-foot easement that's on River Road, is that part of the 100-foot buffer?
No, sir.
Okay, so it's an additional.
That's correct.
Okay. And then the other question I had was, you said that there are 490 vehicle trips per day, but then did I hear correctly when you said there's 100 of those are from the 500-acre subdivision?
That's correct, and that's
Okay.
a standard when they're doing the traffic impact analysis, is for them to account for that potential traffic that would be coming in from that connection to that 500-acre tract to the north. But Barrington itself would only be generating 390.
Okay, and that 500-acre tract could also empty out onto Spotswood Furnace?
Potentially, yes, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Dr. Trampy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under key findings, it says cash contributions mitigate capital facility impacts. Are we calculating capital facility impacts the way we always have, or in light of the new proffer law, are we saying if there's capacity after the neighborhood goes in, that's zero impact? Which way are we calculating that?
We're basing it inconsistent with the new legislation, and this is the based on existing capacity and levels of service, and this project's impact on that level of service.
Do we know what the impact would have been had we calculated it the way we used to?
No, sir, I didn't calculate it, and that wouldn't be acceptable for us to recommend.
Thank you.
Mr. Benton.
Okay, I thought I heard you say this was done on 5-acre tracts, but then you said 2 to 3 acre tracts.
The density is 1 unit per 5 acres, but the actual lot sizes will be 2 acres minimum. Some are almost about 3 acres, but the density is 1 to 5.
Okay, and you say in the traffic, it was 490 with including the 500-acre tract?
Yes, sir.
390 with the
Just
197-acre tract?
Yes, sir.
Seems like those figures are very far off. I mean, you got 500 acres compared to 200.
So it's not based on the acreage, it's based on the units. So it's 39 units with the Barrington development, and you would assume approximately 10 trips per unit. The by right development potential for that 500-acre tract with its zoning is a maximum of 10.
Well, we know that won't happen. I think it's pretty common sense that anybody going to develop 500 acres, they're not going to do 10 tracts.
So they would have to come and rezone and go through that process.
So we're potentially talking a whole lot more traffic, potentially.
If they rezoned the property, yes, sir.
All right, that's it for now.
Could you pull up the map, like 1 or 2 into your presentation?
The layout or the?
Yep. So right there.
Mm-hmm.
So could you tell us so the 500-acre tract is to the north,
Yes, sir.
And on the other map, if you could circle it there. So couldn't you access that from any of the other already built-out areas? And why is that included in this, I guess is what I'm saying, when it looks like it could be accessed from many different places other than this property?
It could.
Already.
But to meet VDOT's standard, they had to provide that connection to meet the secondary street acceptance requirements. They had to provide that connection to that tract of land. So when going through the traffic analysis, they had to account for what that by right development would be.
And it didn't occur to me before, but do you happen to know off the top of your head both southwest and southeast of this property, the density? So you're saying the density in this proposed is 5 acres per home. What's the density on the existing ones to the southwest and southeast? Or just, I guess, basically?
So estates at Chancellorsville, that was a rather old vested preliminary plat. Any of the new development, like this is Woodland Manor, the density is the same. This is their open space here. So they had the 1 unit per 5 acres.
Okay.
Now their lot sizes, I believe, are still 2 or some maybe larger than 2.
Is it the same over on Hickory Court to the right?
One.
Yeah.
Those look smaller. I would have to look at those, Mr. Ross.
And then I just question the 10 trips a day. I've got a fairly large family. I'm not sure we get 10 trips a day. Where's that come from? And maybe Dan can answer that, or.
That actually comes from the ITE trip generation manual. It's just a formula for the trip generation.
Has it ever been questioned before or validated?
They continually do studies because there's different like commercial ventures. There's gas stations with fast food restaurants in them, so they're continuously updating them. But the 10 trips is actually 9.54.
Okay.
But that one's been that way for a long time.
That's probably a guy on a motorcycle. 5'4", that .54. I know who that is. Okay. Any other questions from the board? All right, thank you. I guess the applicant has 10 minutes.
Mr. Chairman and other members of the Board of Supervisors, my name is Charlie Payne with the law firm Herschel Fleischer, and we represent the applicant. We appreciate your time this evening. It's always a pleasure to be in Spotsylvania County. I've got a PowerPoint that I'm going to present and be brief as possible. Then thereafter I can answer any questions you may have. We also have our engineer here, our civil engineer, and our traffic engineer. So if there's something I can't answer, I'm sure they'll be happy to. Next slide. As staff had noted, and I appreciate staff's report, this parcel includes almost 200 acres. It is located near the intersection of River Road and Spotswood Furnace Road. The property is currently undeveloped, and is remaining parcel from the Woodland Manor development, as staff had noted. There were 9 lots developed by right from that project. This is the remaining parcel from that. This is also property that's owned by the Bear Christie family. They have owned this property for over 100 years collectively. They have long-term residents in Spotsylvania County. The property is currently zoned RU, which is rural. The proposed rezoning is for a planned residential rural district, which is a PRR2, which is consistent with the county's comprehensive plan. This is a low-dense residential single-family project. We're proposing 39 units. So if you think about all the acreage that the family has owned, including our 200 acres, you're looking at a net of 45 units, period. Again, the density, as staff had noted, is 1 unit for every 5+ acres. Your comprehensive plan actually encourages for this part of the county 1 unit for every 2 acres. So this is much less than your own comprehensive plan proposes. And remember, by right development is just a minimum number. It's not the end of the story. It's just a minimum number of units. We are preserving well over 55% of the area, well over 107 acres for this purpose. As staff had noted, there's also a view shed of 100 feet in width, which exceeds the requirements on the PRR2 by 25 feet. So basically, you won't see it from River Road. The open space will be used, as staff noted, to protect natural and cultural areas, passive recreation, and buffering along property lines. Again, Property owner is local, been local for a very long time. The developers and builders are local, and they have developed developments such as Glen Haven, River Glen, and Summers Landing. They invest locally and they hire locally, and you'll hear some of that tonight. Next slide, please. The surrounding area, staff had noted, to the north is undeveloped, to the west is residential subdivisions, very similar to what we're proposing. Across River Road to the south is agricultural land and single-family detached units, and to the east is undeveloped land and single-family detached homes. So very similar surrounding development. Here's a general location. Next slide. Cultural resources and environmental. I know there's been some questions or concerns about runoff. Again, the site has been previously disturbed and timbered twice. It's not within the county's historic overlay district. We did identify one Civil War work site. We are preserving that, as staff noted. We are preserving over 55% of the site. There's no impacts to wetlands. There's no impacts to the watershed. As staff had noted, we have to follow not only county but state requirements for runoff and contain and treat water on site. And as I stated earlier, this project also includes a scenic buffer of 100 feet in width, exceeding the 75-foot minimum. Staff has noted certain information about the comprehensive plan. This is simply to reiterate that. The project is consistent with the county's comprehensive plan. The comp plan's future land use map classifies the property as part of the rural residential land use designation, which encourages large lot residential cluster development. The preservation of land through conservation easements or preservation methods is also encouraged on the comp plan. We're doing that. We're preserving well over 107 acres. Comp plan actually encourages a more dense development of 1 unit for every 2 acres, and we're actually at 1 every 5.07. So we're less dense than your own comprehensive plan encourages. Adjacent properties will not be impacted. There'll be minimal impacts due to extensive buffering. And the open space, again, is well over 55.3%. Next slide. All, again, consistent with the comprehensive plan. You've seen the GDP. This is the GDP regarding the project. You'll see the buffering to our east, west, and north and south. Next, please. Fiscal benefits. I think this is very important, certainly in this day and time of challenging proffers and proffer analysis. The homes, on average, will be sold at $675,000 with the ability to upgrade to $1 million. When we do our fiscal impact analysis, we're looking at what the home sales prices are, not necessarily what they're assessed at. So a little bit different analysis. So staff's analysis is on-site, and so is ours, but we also include off-site impacts as well. So on-site, we're about $110,000 per unit, and off-site, we're the remainder. Which you'll see is $133,000. So our total net revenue impact after build out is $244,000 annually. These folks not only going to pay residential taxes and personal property taxes, but they're also going to spend money in your jurisdiction. And with these type of incomes, they have disposable incomes, and they typically do that locally. If you compare what the average home is assessed at in Spotsylvania County, about $255,000 on the higher end, and where you break even from a tax revenue generation from the unit is at $374,000, you'll see that there's a deficit there. There's an inherent deficit. So projects like this, which not only pay for themselves, but also help offset the impact of the deficit that is derived from your average assessed value, is important, especially when you are challenged with increasing your commercial revenue taxes. So projects like this pay for themselves and offset impacts. Again, as I stated, local developers, they invest locally, they employ locally. You'll hear some of that tonight. I just talked about the fiscal impact and the off-site impacts generated by disposable incomes. They spend locally. It does have a positive ripple effect. Next slide, please. Schools, as staff noted, there's minimal impact to schools. This site generates about 22 school-age kids total. That is consistent with the school systems per student, per household count. And there, as staff has noted, there's adequate capacity in the local schools for these students. Next slide. Transportation, there's been a lot of questions about transportation. Again, this is a very small project, very small impact with 39 units. The breakdown of traffic is here. The distribution includes, as staff had noted earlier, 40% going east along River Road, 40% going south along Spotswood Furnace, and then 20% west along River Road. The site does abut River Road and Spotswood Furnace at the four-way stop. You know, and the questions regarding the ITE and the interparcel connection requirements, we're saddled with that. It's not something that I would agree with per se in regards to what the trips would be. 10 units, 10 trips per unit in a rural area to me is a little high, a lot high. But we're saddled with it, and that's the requirement. So that's why the count is at 490 versus 390, even though I would challenge the 390 count, and why we've got to have this interparcel connection. It's got nothing to do with the project, but rather what VDOT requires. Level of services, even with that high count, in my opinion, level of services remain excellent. A in the AM and B in the PM. And remember, your comp plan goal is at least a level of services C. The applicant has agreed to dedicate 30 feet of right-of-way. It is not part of our scenic buffer of 100 feet. And we are putting in a 100-foot right turn taper into the site. And this is not a proffer, but this is something that we intend to do if improving our project and improving public safety in that area, is that we do desire at the site plan stage to put a left turn lane into the site. For purposes of the outer connector, for those who weren't fans of the outer connector, this was one of the potential crossing locations along River Road. So this will eliminate that option into the future. Next. Public safety, again, minimal impact on county public safety facilities. Fire and Rescue Station 5 would serve this location. It's just about 3 miles away. The new stations are planned until, are not planned until 2021. Station 12, however, there is a new fire and rescue training facility which we're contributing to with our proffers. Next. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have and appreciate your time this evening.
Any questions from the board?
Got one.
Yep. Mr. Patton.
What was some of those other subdivisions that they've done? Summers Landing, I know, is one.
Glen Haven, Summers Landing, and there was one more, I'm sorry. River Glen, sorry.
River Glen.
Yep.
Is it which one of those three is this? Would this more closely fit?
River Glen.
River Glen.
Right, and that's the comparable that the county did their analysis with.
That's the one off. Is that off bench? Where's that off?
Off River Road.
River Road.
Yeah, River Road.
Okay. River Glen.
Dr. Trampy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing struck me as odd. One of the slides listed that the students would go to Chancellor Middle, but then they would go to Riverbend instead of going next door to Chancellor High. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Schools need to do some redistricting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? I have one. It might be for staff, but in order to do something in the future with the 107 acres, if this were to pass, would it be impossible, that 107 acres locked into being free and not developed in perpetuity?
The applicant has proffered that would be conserved in perpetuity, and it would be covenants that would run with the property.
A future board would not be able to change that.
That would be the covenants
Gotcha.
recorded with the property.
Okay. All right, if there's no other questions, I guess we'll open up the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. Does anybody sign up to speak?
Nancy Cole.
This is the right time.
Yes, Nancy.
I might ask if you would give me the additional time.
Is there any objection with the board? That's okay with me.
Okay. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Nancy Cole, and I live at 13603 McLean Place, off River Road, in the Cortland District. I am here this evening to address this problem that Spotsylvania County has with handing our county over to speculators and developers. You have a responsibility to look out for the citizens of this county first, not the speculators. In my 28 years of living along River Road, I have watched our once beautiful area turn into the asphalt jungle and the Daytona 500. With the advent of overbuilt Central Park, Celebrate Virginia, and various strip malls, a nursing home at one end, blocked in by endless row houses, and an overbuilt Section 8 townhome development across the street from that, our lovely area has turned into gridlock city. polluting our Rappahannock River, disturbing our wildlife, causing an imbalance in our environment, all because these speculators want to line their pockets, and you are falling for it because you think it is good for the county. Well, the county is your citizens. And if you think bloating them up by developing every last inch of land is good for the county, you have it wrong. Money isn't everything. Peace and a good quality of life are. The Barrington subdivision does not have to happen. The proposed development area was originally included in a larger 230-acre parcel zoned RU. The Spotsy zoning code allows for a by right 10-lot cap on rurally zoned properties. In 2015, the owner created 9 lots adjacent to this project, leaving the remnant parcel now being proposed as Barrington. Adding new development rights to the Barrington parcel ignores the county's land use planning and zoning while simultaneously increasing Spotsylvania County's tax burden. Because there is no development rights associated with this project, any new plan for the land is purely speculative. I would like to read you what your planner, Kim Pamato, has said about the development rights on the property in an email in March. Question, I understand that the proposed Barrington parcel has 0 development rights. Is there an established process for a landowner to gain new development rights on the parcel where the development rights have been previously negotiated away? The proposed development area was originally included in a larger 230-acre parcel zoned RU. And if such a process exists, can you point me to where I can learn more about this? Answer, Kimberly Pamato, you are correct that the Barrington parcel has no development potential, that by right lots are utilized as part of the development of the adjacent subdivision Woodland Manor. In answer to your question, the only method for a property owner to gain new development rights on a parcel such as this is to rezone the property. If this statement has changed since March or is incorrect, Spotsylvania County has a responsibility to let the citizens know so we can know how to address this project. The project would cause increased taxes for Spotsy residents from creation of new developmental rights where no rights exist. The development rights originally allocated to Barrington Tract were transferred to an adjoining property in 2015 for profit purposes. Creating new development rights where none exist puts a burden on residents, as well as an unnecessary increase in taxes. The American Farmland Trust, which studied over 100 communities throughout the U.S., found that, on average, working and natural lands require only 36 cents for every dollar of taxes paid, while each dollar of revenue received from residential properties requires 1.15 cents of services on those lands. Please note, the developments in this particular area alone, Fawn Lake, last I heard, 78 homes for sale and sitting empty, and people not buying them at that price range. On the Barrington physical impact statement, it says 152 similar homes have already been approved by the county, and over half have not sold. This project would also cause increased traffic and safety concerns because River Road is a dangerous cut-through to Central Park and Celebrate, Virginia, and has a dangerous overuse problem. Additionally, this project is only 750 yards from our beautiful Rappahannock River and would cause pollution runoff into Pipe Dam Run and LaRoque Run. Also, there are 5 driveways proposed that will disrupt the wetlands. And really, who wants to live right next to electrical transmission lines? Spotsylvania County officials are under no obligation to consider rezoning the Barrington subdivision. County officials made a deal in 2015 that allowed the property owner to receive financial benefit from transferring the existing development rights to the Woodland Manor subdivision. All right, I'll wrap it up. In addition, the project was voted down by the Spotsylvania Planning Commission in August. This is your advisory body, and I would hope that you would not ignore their advice. Don't succumb to special interest here, so please vote no to the project. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no other citizens signed up to speak.
Is there anybody that's not signed up to speak that would like to speak at this time? Mary Lou?
Mary Lou Collier, Mr. Skinner's district. Although I don't live in this district, I noted there was so much information being given out, but I picked up and I have a technical question. There are public wells and septic tanks. However, I understood no site plans were conducted for water runoff. Is that a standard procedure not to conduct a site plan for water runoff? Or should one be done? It's questionable. I don't understand what the standard procedures are, but I thought it was kind of strange that no site plans were done for water runoff, and I think that should be addressed and questioned. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that did not sign up to speak that would like to speak at this time? Sure.
My name is Glenn McClinney, and I am co-owner and president of M&M Soil Consultants, and I have worked with the developers that are proposing this development on their other projects. I would encourage any one of you that has not been out and seen the River Glen development to go out and take a look at it. It's beautiful. The wildlife is incredible out there, and they have preserved. I actually did the wetland study on this project, so I know where the wetlands are. They have changed their plan to miss any impacts to the wetlands, and they identified a small world begonia that's an endangered species that they have preserved. But like I say, I just would like to encourage anybody that hasn't been out and seen what kind of work they do to go out and look at it. They hire local contractors, they hire local builders. You'll probably have someone speak to that, but local builders have a really hard time finding lots that they can buy to compete with the national builders. So, thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this time that did not sign up? Yes, sir. We got in the black, or, yep. Sure.
Good evening. My name is Aaron Osleger. My friends call me Hank. The name of my company is Arenal Homes, Inc., and I'm currently building in River Glen, and I do ask you to come by and check it out. It is fantastic. But again, I stand here on behalf of builders like myself. It is true we're boxed out, and we'd like more opportunities to build, and they're just not there for us today. So I applaud this type of development because the developer's committed to work with local companies. And again, we build local, we hire local, we buy local. So again, this is a positive thing for our county. So many thanks.
Thank you. And in the back?
Hello, my name's John Hurst. I'm with Hurst Homes, and I've also built in River Glen. As a matter of fact, I encourage you guys to come out and see it. As a matter of fact, I liked it so much I actually built my own home in there. It's a beautiful subdivision, and I concur with Aaron all that us local builders, we have limited lots to build on. My wife's a realtor, and with that, we try to find lots for customers all the time, and they're just not there. And a subdivision like this is perfect for us. Again, we hire local. We use all local subcontractors as part of the Builders Association, and we need more subdivisions like this in our community, I think. So thank you. I hope you can approve it.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this time that didn't sign up to speak? Yes, sir.
My name's Earl Perry. I'm the owner of a small plumbing contracting business here in Spotsylvania County, right down the street on Brock Road. Just wanted to reiterate everything that these guys have been talking about. Excellent builders building in the River Glen subdivision. The fact that they hire local guys like me to come in and do the work, I'm able to hire local guys to actually get the work done. We're involved in the apprenticeship program and journeyman program for local guys, sending them to school. We buy local. Where all our tax base is right here, and it's an opportunity for us to take, and work locally instead of driving 2 hours to and from a job and stuff like that. And it's a heck of a nice project, and every one of the builders are excellent, and the product is, above the charts when it comes to any type of building. And we don't get an opportunity to work for the big box stores, the box builders. They pull in people from out of state, out of town. So again, I encourage you guys to go out and look at it. It's a fantastic development, and we'd like to keep it all local if we could. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this time? Yes, yes, ma'am.
Good evening. This is my first time speaking in front of all of you. My name is Michelle Hall. My husband and I own and operate J. Hall Homes. We've been building since 1999. We're a small custom home builder. We built in a number of homes in the Summers Landing development and also in River Glen, and we take pride in the fact that we can build with local developers, local contractors, and the two applicants that are applying for this have always taken care of the community that they've been in and are always striving to make it more and more beautiful with the resources that they have. So I'm hoping that you will take into consideration what they've had to say tonight and approve this development. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this time that did not sign up to speak? Okay, with that, we'll close the public hearing, and the applicant has 5 minutes of rebuttal.
Mr. Chair and other members of the Board of Supervisors, again, Charlie Payne with the law firm Herschel Fleischer, we represent the applicant. I'm going to be real quick in some responses and then allow Mr. Shercliffe to speak, who's going to reiterate his commitment to local investment and retaining and hiring local builders and tradesmen. But again, just to reiterate, if you think about what the parent tract here was, including the woodlands, you're talking about 250 acres, and the net number here is 45 lots on 250 acres. Your comp plan says that's allowed on one unit on every 2 acres. Well, if you combine the two of them, it's 1 unit on every 5+ acres. So this is a much less dense proposal. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan. It's being done in a responsible way. It's being done by local investors. It's relevant to long-term property owners in Spotsylvania County, and it's a project that pays for itself. In regards to the site plan question, that's done at the site plan stage, where we do provide a stormwater management plan at that point. Of course, that's going to be in accordance with state law and with county requirements, so that if this is approved, that would be the next step before they could build. Just in regards to net tax revenue and impacts, property and land use doesn't generate a heck of a lot of tax revenue for the county. Property that is invested that does include high-end homes generates a lot of positive tax revenue for the county, even before a home is built. So once it's approved, the assessed value goes up if this is approved for a rezoning. So you'll get that immediate benefit on the tax revenue front before one home or one child goes to school in Spotsylvania County. So with that, I'm going to have Mr. Shercliffe come up real quick, and you got 3 minutes, Mr. Shercliffe.
I'm wearing two hats. I'm one of the applicants, partner of John Rails. I'm also the owner of Trevelyan Homes, who've been building houses in this county for longer than anybody. You can tell by my gray hair. And during the course of the last 2 weeks, I've spoken to a lot of folks, subcontractors, suppliers, our local builders, and I've actually gotten a new perspective. I thought I understood completely what our benefit was, but I did not. And in a conversation I had with Debbie Moyer, who is a salesperson for Jim Carpenter, as I was explaining our benefit with the purpose of trying to get her to call you guys, she stopped me in my tracks and was rather amused, and she said, "Rob, I don't think you really have any idea just what a benefit you are." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, let me explain to you who touches every order you place." So she went on to explain that she types the order in, and then it's checked by a manager. It's sent down to a warehouseman named Robert, who gives it to another, he's the manager of the warehouse, who gives it to a warehouseman to collect the order. Then a separate man who can operate a forklift loads it, and then a driver, of course, delivers it. And then there is a person in accounts receivable who sends me a bill. And I knew there was many steps, but I never had stopped to contemplate just how many mouths we feed and how many people we benefit. Doug Sims, the owner of Carpet House, gave a similar explanation, as there were so many people involved from in the warehouse cutting the carpet for a particular house to dispatching an installer, etc. We've got a lot of good people who work for us, who work with us, who depend on us and projects like this. When I think you take into account all the traits of this project, the way we've been so careful to protect the environment and the rural viewshed, I think it's a no-brainer. That's my perspective as a citizen also. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions from the board?
Just, Mr. Chair, a real quick one, and this comes up, it's really more towards the county. This comes up all the time where we said by right, we're allowed 10 lots per parcel. But was it 2002 or so that the county did the down zoning? Is that about the right time frame? Where we 2004, where we essentially took property rights away from homeowners. How many homes could they have built on this site prior to that? We have any idea? On
Tim,
200
do you remember
acres?
what it was before the down zoning?
I think it was some of the staff were at one unit to every 3 acres is my memory.
So there's been somewhere in the 70 or so homes could have been built by right by this property owner, but the county took his rights away, or that person's rights away, and said you can only build 10 unless you come back to the county and pay the fee to authorize. So the county board, part of controlling growth was to come back and make a decision to do this. So I'd hate when we keep saying by right, because we took the rights away from citizens, and now all we're doing is we're coming back and asking for permission to build on their property they had for this one, particularly for over 100 years. So this is a great project. I mean, anytime you build $650,000 plus homes in the county, I think that's a good thing. That's a positive tax flow revenue. But with that, I mean, this is a great project. I know it's not my district, but I will support it.
Mr. Skinner.
Yeah, along those same lines, I just think that when we have an opportunity to support our local people, just not the applicant, but when we have people that live here, spend their money here, electricians, plumbers, roofers, and stuff of that nature, I think it's a great opportunity to give support back to them, because sometimes these big block builders and stuff of that nature, we try to get people to work with them, but unfortunately, we don't have that complete control. But this is an opportunity to do something for our builders, our local builders, and the people that are associated with them. As they said, I think I counted about 10 people just from that one locality there doing that one process, and we don't even think about the electrical people, the plumbers, and stuff like this. So I certainly will support this project.
Mr. Sibula.
Yeah, ditto on supporting the project. It just, it amazes me that now that we're into this new proffer guidelines system, that we're going to get a project coming to us that's going to pay for itself, and we don't have to ask for anything. So therefore, I definitely support this.
Anyone else? Mr. Benton?
I just want some clarification. You know, Ms. Cole made some statements, Kimberly. I was wondering if you could maybe elaborate on what happened with that other development and the number of houses that could be built, et cetera.
I think there's some confusion. Ms. Cole referenced a transfer of development rights. Spotsylvania County doesn't have a transfer of development rights program. Right. Transfer of development rights is when you have one parcel that extinguishes any development potential and transfers it to another property in order to allow them to increase their development potential. This was one property that had 200 and some acres, 230 some acres, and with the RU zoning, the by right maximum lot yield was 10 acres. So they created 9, and the remnant piece is this 109 or 190 some acres where there's just one development. One house can be built on that. So this was a by right subdivision on one tract of land.
Okay. I gotcha. And I get with the, maybe from Mr. Payne or the owner there, the undeveloped, you have about 107 acres or so that you're
Yes,
not
sir.
Developing.
Yes, sir.
But doesn't that exclude a lot of, I mean, doesn't the wetlands and sensitive areas pretty much incorporate all that?
There are some, but a lot of it is open space area.
Just voluntary open space, undevelopable?
It is,
developable?
I'm sorry, that's required under the zoning district, so we have to preserve a certain amount of open space, and we're exceeding that number.
Right. But the 5 acres, that incorporates all of the property?
That's correct.
You're basically developing, if you did the 90 acres
right.
and did the math, you certainly wouldn't come out with the overall 5 acres density, right?
Slightly disagree, because you do take into account the gross acreage in regards to the number of units that we're proposing, and under the particular zoning district, PR2. That district also encourages you to cluster and leave a lot of open space and preserve areas. So that's why we're utilizing that zoning district, and we're accomplishing just that, which is encouraged under your comprehensive plan.
Okay. I'll just make a general, I mean, so far I've voted against every single subdivision that's come up, but I tell you, I'm on the fence on this one still. I don't know what I'm going to do. I've looked this thing over front, back, sideways, and I mean, I like the size of it, the home cost and stuff like that. I still don't believe that any subdivision really pays for itself in the long run. I have a lot of questions about traffic. I know we can't go into a lot of that stuff because we can't consider anything anymore. And like I say, I'm very perplexed. I've heard of your company before too, sir. I've never heard a bad thing about it, and I've been here for many years myself. So usually at some point you hear something negative about some builder, but I've tell you the truth, I've never heard anything bad about you. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Jakubowski.
Thank you. I'd like to say that I will support this project. Years ago, there was a project that was brought to the board when I was on it, and it was Glenhaven. And it was the first clustered subdivision, which up until that point was a very unique idea to our community. And the developer knew that that's the best direction for us to start going. The tract housing that we see happening all over, really over time, it goes downhill. Let's just put it nicely. These type of projects stay at a higher level. They produce more revenue for the county. They do produce revenue above and beyond what they take out. You generally have people at this level too that have kids that are high school, college age, so you don't have the school kids, which is the biggest cost to our community, plus with the revenue that the real estate tax generates, pays for itself and then some. I do think that the traffic finding, if you were to take that 490 down to 390, you're taking 25% off of it. That level of service would probably stay in an A. So this has basically no impact on traffic when you're speaking in those terms. I know that VDOT likes us or requires them to do it, and you have to take it into consideration. But I think that it skews the numbers in a negative way for the project. But I do think that these are the type of projects that I do like supporting, and I think that it's beneficial for the county, and I would encourage other board members to do so. Thanks.
Any other discussion? I'd like to say, Nancy, thanks for coming out. This is, for full disclosure, Nancy Cole is a good friend of mine, and this is difficult for me because this is the first decision on my 6 years on the board that I've had somebody that's a friend of mine that's actually opposed something that I'm going to support. I have been out to River Glen. I've driven around. I've seen what you guys have done out there, and it's fantastic homes out there. And Nancy, I did listen to everything you said, too. I want you to know I took it all in. $675,000 a home, 197 acres, with 107 of those acres put into preservation forever. So in a future board could put a higher density on there. As Mr. Payne has said, it's 5 acres density per home. The Civil War remnants are preserved, if there's any out there, and the wildlife is preserved out there. I do believe that we will see positive tax revenue. If the entire county was built out like this, we'd probably be one of the wealthiest counties in the nation, because it is a good plan. It really does pay for itself. I think the turn lane added is above and beyond, and it accounts for some safety. Everything that I've had has been addressed, and I do, lastly, Mr. McLaughlin brought up about property rights, and this board, before our time, did take away property rights, and this property has been in a family for 100 years, and that's important as well. And it is a balance of those who are already here, but also people should be able to do with their property what they want to do with it. So with that, I'm going to motion to approve R1703. Any other discussion? We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Yakubowski?
Aye.
Mr. Sabula?
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
First time in 2 years, aye.
Dr. Trampy?
Aye.
Mr. Skinner?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Mr. Chairman, that is the end of the board's agenda for the evening. Your next meeting is September 26th at 6 p.m. Please do remember, in the meantime, the Civilian Military Quarterly event at Stevenson's Ridge next Tuesday at 7 p.m. And if you would, please, immediately after adjournment, we missed an opportunity for your photo with the resolution for the public safety item that was on. This was recognizing a Public Safety Awareness Day, August 24th, First Responders Appreciation Day. Would like to take a photo of the board with that resolution, if you would. Jay, please come forward. Thank you. If you would like to adjourn.
All right, motion to adjourn. Call the question. All the ayes?
Aye.
Any nays?